the most simple and obvious complex for weightlifting. The thing about things that are simple is that they're often effective. So here's the deal. This is a really simple thing, and you can take it and apply it any way you like. Your first one is from the floor. Your second one is from the hang. That's it. That's it. That's the whole complex. So let's say, you're going to do a clean from the floor and then a hang clean. Or you're going to do a power clean from the floor and then a hang power clean. You're going to do a snatch and then a hang snatch, or a power snatch followed by a hang power snatch. That's literally the complex. It's just 1-1, right? So one from the floor, one from the hang. Now, why would this be so effective though, right? And this is the thing that matters here. So one, I pointed out that it's simple. Two, it should be self-evident and obvious. Like, you're like, oh, duh. Like, that would be the most effective thing you can do. Why though, right? Why? Well, here's the funny thing. A lot of athletes are actually stronger from the hang. What? Yeah, it's weird. You'll see guys make lifts from the hang that they couldn't make from the floor. Why is that? Well, you have a stretch shortening cycle. So, when you're coming off the floor, I'm not going to say that there's no eccentric, actually. I'm going to argue that there actually is still an eccentric, because if you watch a lot of lifters, they actually pull themselves down to the bar as they initiate the first pull. So that in itself is just like the deadlift. People always say, oh, there's no eccentric in a deadlift. And it's like, well, kind of, like, you're actually pulling yourself down to the bar. Like, watch how much slack guys pull out of a deadlift bar. You're pulling yourself down to the bar and wedging under. Weightlifting has a bit of that. In fact, you'll watch guys do this thing where, like, they drop their hips, like, really aggressively to initiate the pull. Not all. There are some people who definitely come off of a dead stop. But you'll see a lot of little movements, these micro movements that people make to initiate the first pull. What they're doing is they're actually creating a slight stretch shortening cycle. So whenever you do one from the floor, right, you're not getting a lot of stretch if you were getting any at all. But then you do one from the hang, where now you slide down, getting that stretch shortening cycle, right? You're getting that stretch reflex, and boom, back up. So this actually makes the second rep, technically, if it was by itself, the second one from the hang is actually easier. But not really, because now you just did one from the floor, so there's a slight little bit of fatigue there. And this is why this complex is so great, though, because what happens is it allows you to basically take a weight that maybe you could only do, singles with from the floor, but now you can kind of get 2 reps in because you're going to do one from the hang. And so over time, as you get better at this, you'll find that now suddenly weights that, maybe you would have done a single with, you're able to do a double with, but only because of the way that you're doing this complex where you're doing floor then hang. I really feel like this is a great way for people to get more reps in, number one. And number two, I think that this is a very effective method for people to really dial in their technique as well, because we all know that the most important part of the lift is coming around the knee. And so depending on how you do this, because not everyone's going to do one from the hang where they may do a high hang, which is still effective. But if you were to do one from the floor and then one hang just below the knee, oh, now we're getting technique work in as well. So you see, you can take this complex of floor and hang, and you can use it in multiple ways. So if your goal is to create more power strength, that adaptation, maybe you do floor and then high hang. But if you're trying to use it for technique work, then you would do something like floor and then from below the knee hang, because now you're getting 2 reps of practicing coming around the knee, which is the hardest part of the lift. And so I really think that this is a very effective method. It's, like I said, it's self-evident. Now, the thing that I want to pull, to like not finish this off and just drop it here, I do think that people should be smart about how heavy they go. Ideally, I like to see people training around 80%. And the reason for that is because your mechanics start to change. So like if you're using 50%, like you can, I know that this is not going to be a perfect math, because like if you weigh 100 kilos and your heaviest snatch is 60 kilos, you're still lifting something that's lighter than you weigh. So you can muscle it. But if you're someone who weighs, say, 70 kilos or 75 kilos and you're snatching, 80 kilos even, you're now moving something that's heavier than you are. So, this kind of changes the mechanics a little bit, because it changes the center of gravity, right? And so I'm going to say that, just as a blanket rule, I like to see people do this complex with something around 80% of their max. I would not go a lot heavier than that though. Like I certainly wouldn't attempt to do this with 90%. Maybe if you're very good already, like your technique is already very consistent, you could go as heavy as 85%. If you are not very consistent, then you may want to go as low as 70%, okay? That's just a footnote that I want to put on this. I would not try to max out on this complex is basically what I'm saying. I'm saying that to get the best effect out of this complex, I think that you're better off using something around 80%. If your technique is very good, maybe you can go as heavy as 85%. If your technique is not fantastic, 75%, maybe even 70%. And I think that this is just a really great method for people to improve not only their power production, but also if you do your second one from below the knee hang, now you're also getting technique work in. And so, that's why I think that this is really just, it's kind of self-evident. Like now that I explained it, you're like, duh, like that makes common sense. Like it's so obvious. But perhaps it wasn't obvious until someone pointed it out. It's one of those weird things where it's like, you didn't notice this thing and then someone points it out to you and then suddenly it's like, you can't notice it. Like you can't not notice it, or however you want to say. Like I don't, it's like, I never noticed, this stain on the carpet, but then someone points it out to you and it's like, now you notice it every single time you walk past. So it's just one of those weird things where it's like, maybe you hadn't thought about this before, but now that someone brought it up, it's like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Hope this helps.